the gendered brain. This meeting will be recorded, as you can see. We're going to be discussing the gendered brain. Now, because the meeting is being recorded, if you have any issues related to being heard or seen on the recording, please do let us know, either in the chat now or afterwards as well, okay? So if in terms of today's agenda, and as I said, we're going to be discussing the book in detail. However, we're just going to give a brief introduction into what the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee is. I'll give a brief overview of the book, its relevance to equality, diversity and inclusion, and then we've picked out a few themes in the book that we can discuss, and then we're going to have an open dialogue where we'll ask some questions and it'll be an open forum for you to give your insights, and then we'll have some closing statements. So I think, first of all, it's probably important to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Mukak. I'm actually located in Brussels, Belgium. And I am the education co-lead of the ESRS's EDI, or Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee. You can all see my colleagues on the left-hand side of the slide there. The book club initiative is actually put together and really run by my colleagues Sana and Ines, who are also online today, and they work together as our committee's communication lead. So you're more than welcome to say hello if you wish, Sana and Ines.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's meeting. Happy to have everyone here.
And so wonderful, and that's Sana then. And so I think it's good just to review our mission as a committee. We are looking to promote equality, diversity and inclusion across sleep research and clinical practice, support inclusion, research design, careers and community culture. And we do this through a few different avenues. One is evidence gathering and surveys. We also serve to in sort of policy input within the ESRS. And then we have community initiatives like this, the book club. We also have childcare grants, and the team is putting together a paper for sleep awareness, which hopefully will be published quite soon. So yeah, keep in store for that one. Before we begin the book discussion, it's really important that we briefly establish some sort of shared guidelines to create a respectful and an open space. So we like to make sure that this is a safe and inclusive environment for exchanging ideas and also experiences. We welcome different perspectives. Disagreement, of course, is natural and it's actually very valuable, but we aim to keep the tone very respectful and constructive. So just please be mindful that some topics may be personal or sensitive. Speak from your own perspective and then avoid any assumptions about others. To allow for multiple voices, I might occasionally invite other participants to speak or gently move the discussion forward. And you're welcome to raise your hand in Zoom, share your thoughts in the chat, and you can pass if you prefer not to comment at all. Both professional expertise and also lived experience are really equally valid in this discussion, in this space. So before we dive into the content, let's start with a very quick icebreaker. We'd love to hear your immediate reaction to the book. So using Mentimeter, grab your phone, use the QR code, and then please share one word that captures how the gendered brain made you feel. Here, there are no right or wrong answers. Some people find the book really empowering, while others might find it challenging or frustrating. Just waiting for them to come in now. And again, yeah, we're really interested in just seeing your first impressions. Okay, wonderful. Let's get this up here. Yeah. So it's interesting to see themes here. Some people are inspired, surprised. Theme of socialization. I think that one of the strengths of the books is that even when people don't agree with every argument, it tends to make us examine the assumptions we might not have realized that we actually carry. Okay, I'll move this over here. Okay, so for anyone that might not have finished the book or perhaps only read, selected chapters, or maybe you read it a long time ago, I really wanted to briefly frame Rippon's central argument. So the gendered brain challenges what she calls neurosexism. The assumption that differences between men and women are primarily the result of these innate fixed differences in the brain's organization. She isn't arguing that biology is irrelevant or that that no difference exists between the sexes. Rather, I think she asks whether we too quickly move from observing a difference to assuming that difference must be hardwired. Her core thesis is that the brain is highly plastic throughout life, and that many differences we observe may reflect decades of experiences, of expectations or opportunities, and socialization interacting with biology. And I think what makes the book particularly relevant for researchers is that it's not only a discussion about gender, it's also a discussion about scientific methodology. I think throughout the book, there's sort of repeatedly these questions about how do we interpret findings? How do we distinguish correlation from causation? Which results get published and amplified? And how do our assumptions shape the questions that we ask? And I think those are the questions that extend far beyond neuroscience into sort of many areas of health research. And although she does focus on neuroscience more broadly, I think many of the issues that she raises felt really familiar to me as someone working in sleep and health research. Sleep research frequently reports sex differences. We see differences reported in sleep duration, insomnia prevalence, sleep disorders architecture, and of course, brain activity during sleep. And these findings are really important. But I guess what Rippon is doing is she's really encouraging us to ask an additional question. What assumptions do we bring when we interpret those findings? So, for example, if we observe a difference between men and women in sleep quality, are we automatically assuming a biological explanation there? Could some of that difference reflect caregiving responsibility or work patterns or stress, health-seeking behavior, cultural expectations, etc.? The book doesn't tell us to ignore these biological differences. Instead, I think it is encouraging us to think more carefully about how biological and social factors interact. So as we move into the discussion, I'd invite everyone to keep that question in the back of their minds when we find sex differences in sleep. What assumptions are we making about where those differences come from? And in fact, that brings us to our first theme, which focuses on one of the central ideas running throughout the book, this tension between neuroplasticity and biological determinism. And Rippon, she argues that brains are not static structures, that simply unfold according to a pre-planned or pre-programmed blueprint. Instead, they're continuously being shaped by experiences throughout our life. And I think one example that stayed with me was the discussion around the children's toys preferences, where the toy choices are often presented as evidence of innate differences between boys and girls. And there's this assumption that boys naturally gravitate toward certain activities and girls toward others. And Rippon, she really challenges this interpretation by asking us to consider, I guess, the broader environment in which those preferences develop. From a very early age, children are being exposed to different expectations, encouragement, role models, etc. And the key question really becomes, are we observing a hardwired difference, or are we observing the cumulative effect of thousands of small experiences over time? So with this in mind, I'd like to open the floor up for discussion. Now, if we took Rippon's neuroplasticity lens seriously, how might we, as researchers, redesign studies to better separate nature from nurture? And I'll ask my colleagues to help me determine who has their hand up as well, because I can't see it so much right now. Yeah, so we've got a hand up from Ines. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
So to steer a little bit the conversation, I mean, we can see it from the perspective, right, that we can include or start collecting more granular data, right, on like social roles, stressors, environments. So not simply just asking for age and sex. And within longitudinal designs, for instance, like we can track sleep patterns throughout life changes, right? So if someone goes into parenthood or shifts career, my question is, how easy is actually to do this, to collect these super granular data, right? If it is an accumulation of experiences throughout one's lifetime, like how can we really accommodate for these social factors that sometimes are so difficult to control for, right? I wonder what are your thoughts and everyone's thoughts on it.
And analyze that data.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a really valid point, and in fact, that's what I was thinking in terms of this this question as well. I think longitudinal studies would be a very effective way of separating sort of nature from nurture.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe also publishing, sorry, I come again, publishing null results. Maybe this is also a good way to go about it. Like a lot of times one might run an analysis and see, okay, there's no difference between males and females, but I will not report this, right? And this might be contributing a lot to publication biases, right? We only see the positive or the significant results that are put out, and what about the negative or the null results? They are also, this also means that maybe there is no difference, right? Or it might just be because of the methods that are used or the analysis that is being employed, right? So maybe pushing for publishing also null results.
Yeah, most definitely. What about some of our other participants? I don't want to go about calling people's names out. So, for example, would we need better measures of lifestyle and caregiving responsibilities? How would we be able to implement that in our studies? Or really just if we want to think more broadly as well, how can we try and separate these two concepts from one another or integrate them. Okay. All right. I guess we should move on to our next theme then. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So we are, our next theme is slightly shifted away from gender itself and towards scientific practice. One of the things I found most compelling about the book is that Rippon frames this issue not only as like a fairness issue, but also as a scientific quality issue. Throughout the book, she really discusses how small effect sizes can really become quite exaggerated, how exciting findings receive, I guess, disproportionate attention, and how null results often disappear from view. And that's essentially what I guess Ines was just mentioning now as well. She also highlights challenges that many of us will recognize in our daily practices. So selective reporting, publication bias, a lack of replication. And something that I guess we all find is that temptation to tell a really compelling story from very limited data. So I think that these aren't necessarily problems that are unique to gender research. They are, I guess, broader challenges just across science. We often encounter studies sort of reporting sex differences in sleep research. And I guess the question Rippon encourages us to ask is, how robust are those findings? Have they been replicated? Are we focusing on effect sizes or just statistical significance? So I guess what I'd like to ask is, how does the gendered brain challenge the way that we interpret sex differences in our field? In your own research, are you collecting data on sex, for example? You're welcome to write in the chat. How do you tackle the challenge that we're facing with gender? Is this being integrated in anyone's research at the moment? Please let us know. Go ahead, Ines.
So also to steer it a little bit, for me, I do animal research so far. And so, of course, it is difficult to include social and environment. I mean, environment we could include as well, definitely, but social interactions are quite difficult to include. We include sex, but after reading this book, I really had the feeling that we are not doing it properly. I feel like we really uh, just scratched the surface of what we could do in terms of analysis, in terms of this granularity. And so it really made me rethink um, my own methods for sure. Not only methods, but indeed analysis, and to try to make them stronger and also to share the null results. I have to say, at times I don't see differences and I think, okay, maybe not worth sharing, but for sure worth sharing, right?
And I guess that's where publication bias comes in as well.
Yeah,
How
sure.
easy it is to publish those results.
Yeah, I mean, very difficult, right? If you have
Precisely.
right, if you have a paper just full of non-significant results or even if you have a lot of significant results and those particular ones are non-significant, maybe a reviewer would say, why are you showing them, right? Is it worth it, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think these are really basic sort of scientific integrity, scientific methodology concepts, right? That she so often describes and talks about in this book. I think we're ready to open the forum up to some of our other colleagues. So Silva says, I'm not researching at the moment, but what I observe in general is that questions concerning the social circumstances of women are not seen enough in research. 100%. I totally agree. I mean, and I think we can speak super broadly. We don't even have to put this in the context of sleep research. It's just something that is that needs to start being collected. Ulrich, I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your name? Ulrich? Ulrich? But good point nevertheless. Ulrike.
Ulrike, yeah.
Ulrike, sorry, it's my Australian accent.
Okay, very difficult name.
You're saying sometimes when a pilot study does not reveal sex differences, the follow-up studies focus on one sex. Oh, very true. Studies are getting published like that, which surprises me. That is such a good point. Have you had this experience yourself?
Yes, I'm also coming from animal research, and very often we had to start with a pilot study, and then it was like, oh, great, we don't see a sex difference, and then the follow-up was based on one sex, I said, but mainly it's males.
Precisely.
And I find it very surprising that you can still publish like that. If you say it, we didn't see sex differences from this and this point. And yeah, I think the awareness is increasing, but I'm still surprised to see papers like that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think this is such a great point. And I think it's something that is a takeaway for me from this book and our previous book as well, where I've had colleagues who have read the book and they've come up to me and said, I am aggregating my data and I'm looking at sex differences, even if it's not part of my primary endpoints or objectives, just so that we have it there for future use. I think that's probably our responsibility of researchers, to provide the data and publish it, even if it's in appendix, for our future colleagues and their research. Really, really sound point there. And I don't want to be that person that pulls people out of their comfort zone. I have a Turkish background, and so I'm very inclined to pick on the one Turkish name I can see here, which is Pelin. Do you have any, again, feel free to pass, but do you have any reflections? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your input. We can move to the next section, which will be an open discussion where we will provide a few questions. Hopefully it'll percolate and we can have a lively discussion about the book. So I think these are just questions where we can start thinking about our reflections on the themes and the topics that have been published. I guess we can start off with the first question. Did anything in the book change how you think about your own work? I guess I can speak from my own experience. So I guess it made me it made me think more carefully about how we move from observing a difference to explaining a difference. And I think it also reminded me to distinguish between sex as a biological variable and gender as a lived experience. Did anyone else find those reflections as well, or am I singular in my thoughts? Apologies. Were there any sort of sections that we found uncomfortable or challenging to read? Yes, go ahead, Ines.
I think for me, it was particularly uncomfortable to realize that decades and decades of research are kind of that there might be bias, right? Because there's all of these social factors and environment that scientists have not been considering, or some scientists did not consider. So this, in the beginning, I was a bit defensive towards it. Like, how can it be that everything might be biased? But I think in the end, it's good to be aware of it, right? Like for ourselves that are now doing research and new research to be cautious on the way that we interpret these past results, and also the way that we allow them to shape our research and the way that we think about our own research, and we go about doing different methodologies, analyzing results in a certain way. So it was a little bit uncomfortable, but I think like this discomfort also allows you to kind of grow and be aware, to be able to change your own approaches.
Yeah, most definitely. Again, if you're sort of unable to put your oh, there we go. Yeah, if you're unable to use your microphone, what does Pillion say? Great discussion, but we do plan to collect data on sex, especially on MR-related measures, but we are still in the planning phase. So hearing points mentioned about gender were really interesting. Yeah, I agree. Is anyone else finding that in their research at the moment? How are they tackling this? Because I would really appreciate some guidance as well. In fact, I think this really this goes really well with 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth point, what are the barriers to change? So we read these books and we learn so much about past research and how it has evolved our understanding of so much around our world, right? And that sometimes it's very biased. And I guess the key question for us as researchers is how do we then utilize all this new information and affect change? What are those barriers? What are our initial first steps? I see. Sana, go ahead.
Yeah, so hi. For me, like most of my researches are on human subjects, so it really matters to have the gender preference because when we design a study, we didn't had a thought like we will be equally dividing the participants. But when we start collecting data, it is very interesting. Like most of my research, like many of them were like almost all of them were human involved, and it was so interesting. There is high female participants as compared to male. So I was wondering like how we can change that better. And sometimes I feel like maybe because there are incentives all the time and women are more like saving money, kind of like they have that thought in their mind. And then when I talk to a male student or male participants, for example, they think like they think in a different way. They think, oh, I'm not gonna do this for just a small amount of incentive, but for women, like every penny matters, and otherwise they wanted to make an impact in the society or in that research. That's why I feel like they participate more. But it would be interesting if we have like equal number of participants, but we might have like different findings. I totally agree with all the participants which they said earlier in our theme one. But we had more female participants, but there was a slight difference in their findings. Like for example, the sleep quality was very good in males as compared to females. Had very poor sleep quality. So it would be very interesting if we can, like, I wanted to hear more from other participants if like there's anything which we can do to help this challenge or like help this research.
Yeah, no, I love the real world example as well. I'll just give it a second to see if anyone has any thoughts on that. Feel free to write in the chat or speak up as well. I think that what you said was really valuable, because I think in the first theme I may have said something about how we often see a difference in sleep quality between our female and male participants. And females tend to have the lower quality sleep. And I think if you're looking at just the raw data, yeah, you would probably suspect that it's a biological hardwired difference. But actually, in actual fact, it's probably to do more with social factors, maybe caregiving responsibilities, etc. Okay, so Silver, it's absolutely fine if you haven't read the book. And I should say that to everybody. It's absolutely fine if you haven't read the book. You may have noticed that like a lot of the discussion points that we say are just general and very broad. It's just to get our minds thinking and the juices flowing about how we can adopt these different ideas into our daily practice, both in life but also professionally as well. So Silver's saying, unfortunately, I haven't read the books so far, just discovered this meeting today. Well, welcome. Hopefully you can come to the next ones as well. And I would highly recommend that you read it because Silver says I will read it for sure. But may I ask a question in this round? I am looking for literature concerning sleep in menopausal or postmenopausal women. It seems to me there are not a lot of books about this topic. At least I didn't find it. Very good pick up there. And it's very true. There isn't a lot of information there about sleep in menopausal or postmenopausal women. I don't have anything on the top of my, like at the top of my mind at the moment, but I know of a few researchers that do have this kind of information. Let's broaden it out to our other participants. We have 14, 15 people who are in the sleep world. Does anyone have any idea about research in this field? I just think it's such a great example of how disproportionate the data is that we have. Oh, thanks, Ines. Yeah, thank you. So Ines knows a couple and she'll be sharing it with Sylvia. Apologies, I said Silva. Oh no, it is Silva. A little bit later on. Okay, so I think we're probably ready to, are there any last thoughts that any pressing ideas or thoughts that anybody would like to share? Just basically, what did you think about the book? If you didn't read it, you know, would you like to? Actually, can I get a hands up? Who hasn't read the book? Great. Okay. And if you haven't read the book, are you now considering reading the book? Just pop it in the chat, say it on the mic, whatever it is that you think. Have we convinced you? That's the question. Wonderful. I'm grateful to know that we've had an impact on your reading choices. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to head into some last remarks. So as we begin to wrap up, I'd really like to highlight 3 key take-home messages from this discussion. First, brains are shaped as well as inherited. Rippon really encourages us to think of observed differences not simply as fixed biological traits, but as the product of biology interacting with experiences across the lifespan. Second, I think the book reminds us to be critical consumers of brain research, but I'm going to broaden that up and say of research. The question is not whether differences exist, but how we interpret them and how confident we should be in the explanations that we're attaching to those results. And third and finally, these issues have direct relevance for sleep science and also for equality, diversity, and inclusion more broadly. Inclusive research isn't only about fairness, it's about improving validity, improving generalizability, and ultimately, I think it's about improving or producing better science. And the book leaves us with a really important reminder that science is shaped not only by the data that we collect, but also by the questions we ask and the assumptions we bring to interpreting that data. So we have a few next steps. If you haven't already, please go ahead and join the EDIC Book Club LinkedIn group. We have a QR code here, so grab your phones out and link yourselves to that. And through there, you can vote for our next book club, which will be after the summer in October. So you get a say. And you can get involved in some of these initiatives if you're interested in this area. But we would really look forward to seeing and hearing from you in the months to come. And we have plenty of time. Ines, Sana, do we know when the next book? So once people vote, when will we receive the results?
So we are planning to do our next session or after Sleep Europe. This will happen in October or next year. So this we are still deciding a little bit. We don't want to make the calendar too busy also with the sleep conference. But we will let you know via our group like Seren was saying. So if you join it, there we really have more an in-depth discussion, and as soon as we have the poll, you will receive a notification if you are part of the group. So we will let you know via there.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see the last comment about that you're beginning the chapter 3 and you think it's crazy to see the lengths the research scientists were going in to try and prove that I know that women are inferior to men rather than how to improve our overall quality of life. I know. But hopefully this is what these discussions are putting an end to. We're making each other more aware of these issues, and it'll make us better researchers. So I'll leave it to Ines and Sana in case they have any additional comments to make or would like to wrap up the session in a specific way.
I just wrote that as there is a lot of interest on scientists working on perimenopausal sleep and menopausal sleep, maybe what I suggest is that internally in the EBI, we gather a few people that we know and works that we do know of, and scientists that we know, and we can share it in the LinkedIn group so that it's available for everyone.
And maybe even in the future, it would be interesting to read either, it doesn't have to be a book, but maybe it's a paper, and then we could invite some of the sleep researchers who look at menopause and perimenopause, and we can have a discussion with them as well.
Definitely, that's a great idea. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you to all of you for joining today's session. If you haven't read the book, I'd encourage you to. But I think we've given you a good overview of what it was about, and some ideas that we felt and thought in the process. I'd like to say thank you so much to Sana and Ines. They made the slides and came up with the themes. All I did was talk. Oh, fantastic, Silva. Great to know that you're thinking about doing research in this area. I'm not sure where everyone's coming from, but I am coming from Brussels, Belgium, and it's very warm. So if it's warm where you are as well, enjoy your afternoon. I'll be staying back just in case anyone has additional things to talk about, but you're welcome to enjoy your afternoons. Happy reading. You're very welcome. Do I remove people from the... How does it work? We can probably stop recording as well.